All right, let's dive into something pretty big this time,
Yeah.
the state. You know, you've given us quite a stack of readings,
Oh, yeah.
a whole lot to dig into, including some really interesting bits from a Harvard Business School case study,
Mm-hmm.
all looking at how the state, this powerful force shapes the world around us.
Right.
So get ready, because we're going to unpack some dense concepts.
Yeah.
But stick with us. We'll be sure you leave this deep dive with some serious aha moments about how the state really works.
It's fascinating. I mean, the state isn't just some abstract idea.
Right.
It's something that's deeply woven into our lives every single day.
Totally. It's like, I don't know, the air we breathe.
Yeah.
We don't
sure.
always think about it, but it's essential,
Absolutely.
It's fundamental.
For sure.
But where do we even begin with something as massive as, like, the state?
Well, a good place to start might be that Harvard case study you gave us.
Okay.
It actually picks up on Max Weber's classic definition of the state. That it's a set of institutions that link public authority and society.
Okay.
So it's not just a government, right?
Right.
It's a whole system.
Yeah.
Rules, institutions, the processes,
Yeah.
all of that governing a place and its people.
So it's not just about politicians giving speeches, it's how everything actually functions.
Right. The nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
The nitty gritty.
Now, the case study also, I think, pointed out this kind of interesting two-sided nature of the state.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
This duality.
Yeah, the state has to look both inward and outward at the same time.
Yeah.
Responsible for keeping order, providing for its own people, but it's also got to navigate the whole global scene,
Right.
represent its interests out there on the world stage.
It's like,
It's a tough job.
yeah, like if you think about a parent
Yeah.
keeping the household running, making sure everyone's fed, following the rules,
Mm-hmm.
but also they had to deal with the outside world, right?
Mm-hmm.
The neighbors, the school, all that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And just like a parent, the state is often having to make hard choices
Right.
about how to use its resources, what goals to focus on.
Juggling it all.
One thing that really struck me going through these readings was how important the state is to the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, I always knew it played a role, but it seems so much more fundamental than I realized.
It really is, and that's something that Harvard case study really digs into.
Yeah.
The state creates the whole framework for economic activity, enforcing property rights and contracts, regulating markets, controlling the money supply.
Wow.
It's like the state sets the stage and writes the rules of the game for the economy. So without those rules, it'd just be total chaos.
Oh, yeah.
Like trying to play Monopoly with no one to enforce the rules.
That's right, exactly.
No one would take it seriously. The whole thing falls apart.
Exactly. And, one of the readings brought up John Locke's ideas about property rights.
Yeah.
And he said, the state's role in protecting property isn't just about owning stuff, but about that feeling of security, knowing you can use, change, and transfer that property without fear.
Right.
And that security is essential for economic growth.
That makes sense. It's not just about having stuff. It's about being able to do something with it.
Exactly. Build a business, create wealth, participate in the economy
Right.
without worrying about it being taken away.
Yeah.
That's what the state provides.
The case study didn't stop there. It also talked about how the state's role in the economy can vary a lot from country to country.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and they brought up those three key variables.
Right.
Autonomy, capacity, and legitimacy.
Like dials, right?
Yeah.
Controlling how a state operates.
They impact a state's influence,
Right.
how effective it is, how much people trust it.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's unpack these dials a bit. Shall
All
we
right.
start with autonomy?
All right, let's dive into autonomy.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this plays out in the real world.
Okay,
Wow.
so autonomy is like, you can think of it as how independently a state operates versus how much it's influenced by, society.
Right.
So a state with high autonomy can basically make decisions, implement policies without worrying too much about pushback from interest groups or even public opinion.
So like France, the case study mentioned them.
Yeah,
They've historically had high state autonomy,
that's right.
so they could push through something like expanding nuclear power,
Mm-hmm.
even if there was a lot of public opposition.
That's a perfect example.
Right.
And then you contrast that with the U.S.,
Yeah.
where lobbying groups and strong public opinion can really sway things.
Right.
And the case study pointed out this difference can even impact healthcare, environmental regulations, all sorts of stuff.
It's fascinating. This is like, it shows how understanding this idea of autonomy
Yeah.
is really important for businesses, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If you're operating in different countries, you got to know the landscape.
Especially if you're trying to launch something new.
Yeah.
a new product, a new service, you need to understand that political context. How much influence different groups have.
Absolutely.
You don't want to go in blind.
It'd be like navigating a maze without a map.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's autonomy. What about capacity?
All right, capacity. This is all about a state's ability to actually get things done,
What?
effectively carrying out its functions.
Right. So a state with high capacity can efficiently collect taxes, provide good public services,
Yeah,
enforce the rule of law, keep things running smoothly.
that's it. And that has a huge impact on economic growth and stability.
Makes sense.
Think about it. Businesses, they thrive when the rules are clear,
Right.
when they're consistently enforced.
Yeah.
When infrastructure is reliable, you know, the workforce is well educated.
Yeah.
These are all things a high-capacity state can deliver.
And the case study specifically said the U.S. and France both score high on capacity.
That's right, they do. But it's interesting, they get there in very different ways.
Really?
Yeah, the U.S., they have a more decentralized system, emphasize private sector involvement.
Right.
They often rely on partnerships
Yeah.
and market mechanisms to get things done.
Interesting.
France, on the other hand, they're more centralized.
Okay.
They have that bureaucratic approach. So they tend to rely on more state-led initiatives.
So there's no one right way to do it.
Exactly. Different recipes, same delicious outcome.
Okay, now we can't forget legitimacy.
Right, legitimacy.
This one feels almost like, I don't know,
yeah.
intangible, right?
Yeah, it's about trust.
Yeah.
It's about belief, acceptance of the state's authority.
You know, it's a difference between people following the rules because they believe in them
Right.
versus just obeying out of fear.
Exactly.
Right.
A state with high legitimacy, they can govern much more effectively because they don't have to constantly rely on force.
That makes sense. It would be exhausting
Oh, yeah.
to try and run a society where everyone's questioning everything all the time.
It'd be impossible,
Yeah.
like trying to herd cats. Right. It's much easier if they willingly follow you.
And this legitimacy, it's linked to transparency,
Yeah,
fairness,
absolutely.
accountability,
For sure.
that feeling that the state is working for the people.
That's key.
It makes me think about those theories of the state we talked about.
Yeah,
It seems like each theory has a different take on how legitimacy works.
that's a great connection.
Yeah.
You're right. Those theories, they give us these different lenses
Yeah.
to view the state's role, the power dynamics, how it all relates to society.
Yeah.
Shall we revisit those in light of what we've been discussing?
Yeah, let's see how the pieces fit together.
Yeah, well, let's start with Marxist theory.
Okay.
Remember, it argues that the state is mainly serving the interests of the powerful.
The elite.
Yeah, the bourgeoisie, as Marx called them.
Right, right. So from that view, a state might have high capacity.
Hmm.
It can do things effectively, control resources.
Right.
But it's all ultimately to keep those in power happy,
That's the argument.
benefit the elite.
Exactly. And that raises some interesting questions about legitimacy, right?
Yeah.
If the state is seen as only serving a small group,
Right.
how can it maintain legitimacy with everyone else?
Yeah, especially those who feel left out.
Exactly, those who feel exploited.
It's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
building a house on a shaky foundation.
Yeah. It might look good on the outside,
Right.
but it's not going to last.
Not stable.
Right.
Okay, so what about pluralist theory?
Okay, pluralist theory, remember, this one sees the state as a neutral space where different interest groups compete and compromise to try to influence policy.
So in that system, the state might actually have lower autonomy
Yeah,
because it's constantly being pulled in different directions.
exactly. And that can affect capacity, too.
Really?
Yeah, because reaching consensus
Okay.
and actually implementing policies can get really slow and complicated.
It's like having a dozen chefs in the kitchen all trying to make one dish.
Exactly. You might end up with something great, but it's going to take a long time
Yeah.
and a lot of back and forth.
But hey, maybe that's a good thing sometimes.
Right.
Maybe that messiness is actually a strength.
It can be, because by including different perspectives, by allowing for compromise,
Yeah.
you can actually end up with greater legitimacy.
Because people feel heard.
Exactly. They might not get everything they want,
Right.
but they feel like their voice matters.
Like that old saying,
Yeah.
if you want to go fast, go alone.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go far, go together.
I like that.
Yeah. So maybe pluralist systems aren't the most efficient,
Right.
but they could be more stable in the long run.
That's a great point.
And what about statist theory?
Okay, statist theory. Remember, this one says the state has its own interests,
Right.
its own goals.
Independent of everyone else.
Yeah, separate from any specific group.
It's like the state's playing chess
Yeah.
on the world stage,
Right.
making its own moves.
Right. So a statist state might prioritize things like national security,
Mm-hmm.
economic growth,
Yeah.
social stability,
Oh.
even if those goals don't perfectly match what any specific group wants.
Right, right.
And a statist state might have really high capacity.
Because it can just get things done.
Yeah, because it can mobilize resources, implement policies without having to appease a bunch of different groups.
But wouldn't that impact legitimacy?
It could.
Right. If the state is seen as too independent, not listening to the people.
Yeah, that's a balance they have to strike.
Right.
It has to be decisive,
Yeah.
strategic.
And also accountable.
Exactly.
Like walking a tightrope.
Yeah, you got to keep your balance while moving forward.
Right, now the last one. The predatory state.
Yes.
This one always makes me a little nervous.
I understand why.
Yeah.
Remember, this theory sees the state as mainly concerned with getting more money,
Okay.
maximizing its own revenue,
Right.
sometimes even if it hurts society.
So it's like the state is a predator.
In a way, yeah.
Taking from the people.
It's trying to extract resources, wealth from its citizens.
So it might have high capacity.
Mm-hmm.
It's good at collecting taxes and controlling resources. But it's using all that power just to enrich itself,
That's the
not to help the people.
Right, and that can really damage legitimacy
Yeah.
if people feel like they're being exploited,
Yeah.
like their money is being misused.
Right.
They're going to lose faith in the system.
Like a farmer who overharvests his crops.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Gets a big yield at first,
Yeah.
but ruins the soil for the future.
That's a great analogy.
It's dangerous.
It is.
Now, it's important to remember these are just theories.
Right.
No state perfectly fits into one category.
It's more like a spectrum.
Right.
With states showing different tendencies
Yeah.
based on their history, culture, political system.
But these theories give us a framework.
Yeah, a way to understand how the state works.
How power, legitimacy, and capacity all play together. It's really interesting when you start applying these ideas to real events,
Oh, absolutely.
current events.
It can really open your eyes
Yeah.
to what's really going on.
So all these theories, they really help break down something as complex as the state.
Yeah.
Make it a little easier to grasp.
For sure.
But, everything's changing so fast these days.
It really is.
The digital age, the internet, social media, technology, it's all evolving constantly.
At a dizzying pace.
Do these theories, can they keep up?
That's the big question, right? And it's something a lot of your readings touched on.
Yeah.
The digital age, it's changing the whole relationship between states and citizens.
Yeah. Challenging those traditional ideas of power and authority and legitimacy. So the internet's kind of like a wild card,
You could say that.
right? Shaking things up, creating a whole new set of rules.
I mean, think about social media and political discourse.
Yeah.
Information spreads so fast,
Mm-hmm.
but so does misinformation.
Right.
And it gives individuals a lot of power to organize.
Yeah.
But it can also lead to, more division.
Right. More polarization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So states are trying to figure out how to regulate all of this
Mm-hmm.
without, stifling free speech
Right.
or stopping innovation.
It's a tough balance.
It really is like trying to steer a ship in a hurricane.
Right. Trying to maintain control.
Yeah,
But the forces are so powerful and unpredictable.
exactly.
And it's not just social media, right? It's technology in general.
Right.
The power of these tech giants.
Well, absolutely.
Like Google, Facebook, Amazon.
They have global reach.
Yeah?
They collect mountains of data,
Right.
and they often operate outside of traditional national regulations.
It's almost like they're creating their own mini-states.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Right. In the digital world, their own rules,
Yeah.
their own economies, their own ways of influencing things.
So how do those theories we discussed,
Yeah.
how do they apply to all of this?
Are they even relevant anymore? Or do we need completely new ways of thinking about this?
Well, some people argue those theories still apply,
Okay.
but we need to adapt them.
Update them for this new reality.
Exactly.
So we could, for example, look at these tech giants through a Marxist lens, see them as a new kind of bourgeoisie
Yeah.
with all this power that rivals or maybe even surpasses traditional states.
That's one way to look at it.
Or we could take a pluralist perspective.
Yeah.
See the internet as this new arena for interest groups to compete,
Absolutely.
to influence policy.
Leading to maybe even more decentralized forms of governance?
Like we're watching a whole new political order being born,
It's possible.
where the lines between physical and digital are blurred,
Yeah.
and power is spread out, decentralized.
Which raises a whole bunch of new questions.
Yeah, like how do we ensure accountability,
Right.
transparency in this new landscape?
How do we protect individual rights
Yeah.
in a world where data is constantly being collected?
How do we work together on global problems like climate change
Yeah.
when power is so fragmented?
These are the challenges we're facing,
Huge questions.
and we're only just starting to grapple with them.
But it's not all doom and gloom,
Yeah.
right?
So that's,
It's more like a challenge
Yeah.
to be creative, to adapt.
it's call to action.
Wow. This deep dive has been incredible.
I'm glad you found it valuable.
I'm walking away with a whole new understanding of the state,
That's great to hear.
its role in the world,
Yeah.
the challenges and the opportunities we face.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
There's so much more to explore.
Always more to learn.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the state.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you'll keep thinking about these ideas and
Yeah.
join the conversation.
For sure.
Thanks for listening.